my yarny friends, I'm Sara Sach. Welcome back to my crochet channel, and welcome to this or that and sometimes the other thing. Well, today's video we're going to be discussing a couple of questions that I got concerning what is a motif. Do you know what a motif is? And how do we crochet them? What do we do with them? What's the definition? And is a granny square a motif or not? We're going to tackle all of those questions, and they're really not as hard as you think they are. So our first question concerning motifs is, what is it? And so I looked it up in the Google search engine, and it came up with this. A motif is a French word which literally means pattern. Isn't that interesting? It's used in literature and in art, and crochet is in art. Okay, and so basically, a motif is something that works or is used in a repeating pattern. Okay, crochet is all about patterns. All right, so let me read to you what I found here. A crochet motif is a small, decorative, and self-contained crochet piece that is joined together with other pieces or motifs, and they can be any shape: square, circle, hexagons, triangles, flowers, any shape that you need or want. They can be in various colors, variegated ombres, solids, various sizes, but usually motifs are smaller. They're not as big as, say, an 8 inches, okay? The most common example of a motif is a granny square. So here are some simple examples of what a motif is. Here's a little granny square. Here's a larger triangle. This one is an open triangle. This is a hexagon. And when they become a motif is when you use them in repeating rows. Like a granny square, we make a bunch of them and stitch them together. You could do the same with triangles and stitch them together. So a motif is a repeating pattern, but they're also small. If you're doing, say, a 12-inch granny square, it is still considered a motif. So the granny square is considered a motif, but usually only when it's in a smaller form. Okay? So the question I got from another person was, so are granny squares motifs? The truth is, it doesn't really matter what we call it. They're wonderful. I love granny squares. But this is what I found. Yes, a granny square is a type of motif, specifically a form of a square motif made using the granny stitch pattern. And usually they're smaller, repeating elements that are worked all at the same time. In other words, you make a whole bunch of them and then you just join them all together to create one project. So it's one of these things where all granny squares are motifs, but not all motifs are granny squares. Isn't that fun? So what makes a motif a motif? So actually a motif does not have to be crochet. It can be knitting. It can be elements in a painting. It can be elements in weaving. It can be elements in tatting and lots of different types of art. I found it interesting that it also said, we talked about at the beginning, in literature. It means that they've got a running theme through their book or through their lecture or whatever they're using, what type of literature. It's a running, repeating theme. Isn't that interesting? Running, repeated theme or pattern. So another question that I got was, do they have to be a certain size? And no, they don't. A lot of times you'll see those little tiny squares all sewn together and they're just absolutely beautiful. Sometimes you'll see bigger squares, but also a motif can be other shapes, like we said. And isn't this gorgeous, this little open weave triangle or a hexagon? Okay. Now, their final dimensions depend on several key factors, including the chosen pattern. There's the thickness of the yarn, the size of the hook, and the tension or gauge of the individual who's doing the crocheting or knitting. A single pattern can produce motifs in a wide range of sizes, from tiny floral elements to large Afghan squares. So, according to this, even our large granny squares are considered motifs. And isn't motif a fun word? A French word that means pattern? I mean, that's just right up our wheelhouse, right? A French word which means pattern, used in literature or art. And of course, crochet and knitting are fiber arts. So is weaving and tatting and Tunisian crochet. They're all considered yarn arts. And I know there's more yarn arts than those. But a motif is any size, because it says right here, a single pattern can produce motifs in a wide range of sizes, from our tiny floral embellishments to our large granny squares. So basically, all granny squares really are motifs. But also remember, not all squares are motifs because some things aren't in a repeating pattern. But also, motifs don't have to all be squares like I showed you. Triangles and hexagons, they can be flowers. There's another triangle that I showed you. And this one is actually a little tiny granny square, you know. And so motifs can be any shape, just as long as you use it in a repeating pattern. Isn't that a fun thing to learn about? It totally changed my whole thought process when it came to motifs, because like I said, I thought a motif had to be like a flowery type pattern, and it had to be, you know, lacy and open, kind of like this, that it had to be something similar to this. And I really did think that's what it was. And then as I got in and really started studying this, I was really surprised. And so I even learned a lot learning about motifs. And I hope that you did too. Now, I hope I didn't confuse you with the facts, as my husband says. Don't confuse me with the facts. Because in the long run, this isn't something that really matters. You know, you can call it whatever you want to, and it doesn't even have to be called a motif. It's just a fun thing to learn about. And I like a little bit of trivia. I like to learn things, especially within our craft, which is crochet and yarn fiber arts. Okay? And so that's why I love your questions. I wouldn't even have thought to study this and learn about this if someone hadn't asked me some questions about it. And so I love your questions, and I want to remind you that I love reading your comments and your questions. So please comment down in that description box, or actually underneath the description box in the comment section. I do love to read your comments. And if you have questions, feel free to ask them. I always say there are no wrong answers and no wrong questions. And if I don't know the answer, I will do my very best to find you an answer, okay? Because I love to learn about crochet, and there's a lot out there that we just, you know, I've been crocheting for over 50 years, and I just learned this. It totally blew my mind that I didn't know this stuff about motifs, and that granny squares were actually considered motifs. And so that's really fun to learn that. And like I said, it's not going to change anything in our life except, cool, we learned something new. All right. So thanks for being with me today, and remember to comment. And if you have a question, leave it there. I'll try my best to answer it. All right. So have a great day, and go make some motifs.